Welcome to Afterthoughts, everybody. This is our Recommend or Refute episode where we will each tell you a separate movie or show that we watched and whether we would recommend or refute it. With me, as always, Ryan King. How's it going, Ryan?
It's going well. I'm looking forward to watching something normal.
Something normal? As in not
future.
Quantum Cowboy?
He says that every time.
I guess. Yeah, I'm planning to go watch Wolverine and Deadpool. It's like vaguely normal.
Ooh.
It's like aimed at the regular people.
It's aimed at the normies. So
right,
Ryan's
yeah.
trying to say.
It's aimed at people who can stand Ryan Reynolds.
They've built up a tolerance.
Not me.
I will say, if I see another one of those fucking mobile wireless
mobile
commercials, yeah, I'm done.
And John Garcia. What's up, John?
Hey, I am a year older now and 1 year wiser, I would say. But I'm still
Happy
going to watch
birthday.
a shit ton of schlock. Just had my birthday party yesterday. Dixon came and watched 3 whole movies with me. I would say one of them good, 2 of them okay.
I would agree with you on that. Yeah.
But definitely all of them interesting. So, and I'm bringing none of them to this table. So you're going to have to follow my letterbox to find out what they were. But yeah, I'm ready for this.
Cool.
Excited.
All right, John, well, why don't you kick us off with some interesting things that you've been watching of late?
Yeah, I got a recommend coming at you, literally coming at you. But I guess I was going to say a recommend or refute. It's just a refute coming at you, really. That's what it is. So I watched Comin At Ya. It's a 1981 film.
I saw God-fearing people stripped of their young women and struck down by minions of the devil. Evil men, led by 2 evil brothers. If you ever want to see that scumbag brother of yours again, you do exactly what I say. You don't have to be afraid, because I'm going to do everything I can to get you out of here.
Directed by Ferdinando Baldi. And it's weird because halfway through watching this movie, so the synopsis is Anthony, the star of this movie.
His name is, the actor's name is Tony Anthony.
Sorry, it's Tony Anthony.
Okay.
He's probably Anthony, and he plays H.H. Hart. So I don't fucking know whose idea it was to do that, but it's a brilliant.
The other H's also stand for heart.
Yeah. So, it stars Tony. Tony is the hero of the story. He's going up against like a vague Mexican militia. Maybe they're not Mexican. They partner with Mexicans and they dress as Union and fucking Confederate soldiers for some reason.
Unclear.
Just a bunch of bandits who steal women and sell them at a rich people auction. And they steal his wife and kill him in a church and leave him for dead. Or, they shoot him and leave him for dead in a church. In a scene very reminiscent of Kill Bill Volume 2, which was wild to me. I was like, oh, Tarantino maybe watched this and thought it would be cool. Or there's a better Western it's ripping off that he watched and thought it would be cool. And so Tony has to go on a crusade to find his woman and save her. And along the way, he's joined by a Scotsman that I named Willie because I don't know what his actual name was. He was just a stereotypical Scotsman.
Who plays very little importance in the film. He's just kind of there.
He's found in a confessional booth playing a bagpipe. It's like, that's Willie's time, okay? And the entire premise of the movie is just a framework for them to throw as many 3D effects at you as possible for the entirety of the runtime. It's so like jam-packed with stupid shit that it can make you laugh. Like towards the end, everybody out there who's seen a Western knows there's a sequence in which villains will wait for the hero to show up on town. It's high noon and he's going to have a standoff. So they're all waiting around and it's showing what they're doing. Well, in this one, every villain waiting for the dude at the end gets to do something with the 3D camera. And so one guy's playing with a yo-yo and it goes right at your face. And one guy's playing with a paddle ball and it goes right at your face. And one guy's eating corn and it's falling off right in your face. And they just keep doing that like a Zucker Brothers film until it builds to a point where you'd think it would go absurd. And then it just goes right back into what the movie is trying to do. Like, all right, we're right back at the action. The movie is not good, as you may be shocked to learn.
Bury the lead.
The story is very weak. The characters are extremely flat. Tony is like a melted version of a wax Dean Martin. He just and Dean Martin already had his run in westerns, so we're kind of at that point where really the whole focus is just to do 3D. And halfway through, I was like, man, this reminds me of another movie that I've seen that has 3D in it called Treasure of the Four Crowns. And as I told Dixon about it, I slowly realized that this might be the same guy that was in Treasure of the Four Crowns. And I looked it up. Same studio, same director, same guy. And I'm pretty sure the story is also by Tony, which this one has. So that's another movie that it spends an hour and a half making a heist film, kind of let's get the gang back together. And in the last 10 minutes, it falls apart and everybody dies. And it's great. It's like the best 10 minutes that a movie makes you wait to watch. But yeah, I actually wanted to talk a little bit about this because I'm getting into 3D movies recently. I've been watching a lot. I know folks who've been listening consistently to our podcast have probably heard me here or there talking about watching a movie in 3D, trying to gauge how it feels, what's different about it. This is the most gimmicky 3D possible. So it's the upper bar of somebody abusing the shit out of this technology. And it made me feel nothing. It made me miss having story structure to the point where Dixon and I watched another movie from the 1950s called Wings of the Hawk that was 3D, but it at least had like a boilerplate classic Western story. And I was much more engaged by it because it also had kick-ass horse stunts where people almost died. And to me, like parts of this, I was like, I scoffed at Wings of the Hawk because they had brown face. They had people pretending to be Mexican with their accents that went nowhere. It's just so bad. And the story was also just like really lackluster. It's about a white man who gets his mind taken by a bunch of Mexican federales, and he has to come back and kill them and get his mind back. So he allies himself with the revolutionaries to come back in and do that. Not the most gripping story. I don't really care if a rich white miner gets his mind back or not, but it was way more for me to come to grips with and enjoy because there was at least political dynamics to navigate. There were things that the character had to talk his way around. Like, I don't know, a bunch of characters that were in it for themselves. Here in this movie, it feels like whittled down, like Sergio Leone story structure. Like it was just based on Italian, like a spaghetti Western. They were like, we got good guys and we got bad guys, and the bad guys are really bad, and we just need 3D to be everywhere. I think it really highlights how indexing on one particular technology, if you forsake like the actual core pillars of a film, will just leave you disinterested. And like halfway through, the only thing that kept me going was how are they going to work 3D into other things? And so that's not a good sign of like a movie's engagement, to the point where the trailer for this film in America was literally just not even clips of the movie. It was, they explained how 3D worked. That was the trailer for this film. So it's pretty fucking wild that they just were like, hey, everybody, you like 3D? Why don't you come see a 3D movie? And to have audiences be like, what's it about? And they're like, it's 3D. Like, just see
Right.
The 3D also wasn't very good. Like there were so many scenes where you would see like a ghost of a person walking next to them and stuff that just like wasn't done very well. I don't know if that was a fault in shooting or in editing or putting that together, but it was not great 3D. They did a lot of 3D, but it wasn't like the most seamless 3D that I've ever seen.
I will say it now has me thinking about like trying to critique more 3D films for what they're trying to do with their technology, because this was very much like a stick is coming at you, Ryan. I'm poking it right in your face.
We're lowering a naked baby right on top of you.
Yeah, its genitals clearly visible for you. And I was like, thank you, movie. I'm glad you did this. Really appreciate that. Now we're all on a list. But there were moments that I really genuinely liked the way that the camera was set up, like to give certain depth at times, like a character dangling over, a 2-story building about to fall, and the camera would be right underneath them, like right above them in a claustrophobic way. And the depth really lent itself well to it. I liked that, but that's like 1 out of 1,000 shots for like every few segments that you would see something and be like, that's neat. Every other time it was somebody grabs a thing and then they slowly start to push the thing towards the camera. And that's the whole shot. And that's the joke. And they're like, good, done. So yeah. Coming at you should not be coming at you. Nobody, don't let it near you. Dixon actually joked they should make a sequel called Going Away From You that explores the depth of 3D.
You see the back and they're throwing things away.
Yeah. They did have a sequence that was with bats that were done. The puppetry was like poorer than the Suspiria bat puppet. Just like literally you could tell it was made by like Mrs. Johnson's 4th grade class, and they're like flapping their wings around and people were having to look scared. That was fun, chaotic 3D.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the only other artsy part of it that I liked, I know I'm refuting it, but I still want to give it some, merits here and there, was that they did use a cool coloration at times.
Mm-hmm.
They initially started using like black and white, or it was a, imposed color toning, like light blues to symbolize this is in the past. But then like later in the movie, they just kind of dropped that and are like, this one character is completely in black and white and the rest of the frame is in color. And they would just have them walk around and it looked really fucking wild. It was kind of cool contrast visually, but they didn't really do it for any one purpose. I don't think. It just looked cool. So I want to see more movies try to use that. That seems like an interesting mechanism.
Yeah, it was interesting visually for sure, but I feel like that's kind of all they wanted to do was just make a visually interesting film. Not even that well, but doing lots of 3D effects and doing some weird stuff with the color.
Yeah. So
yeah, it really seems like 3D, right? It's had kind of 3 booms, like the 50s. Right, as it was a new technology and it was just cool. Everyone went to see it because it was new. But it trailed off because movies didn't do anything with it. I don't think there's like any 50s movies that I hear that are like, oh, the 3D is actually like interesting use of the technology. They're all like B-movie shit.
Yeah.
There was like a slight 80s revival, mainly because of this like 50s throwback that was there a little bit in the 80s. And then we had that
like 2011.
2011, yeah.
Yeah, that big boom.
Again, the like technology was updated, and also after TVs had made so much money on HD and making you buy a new TV, they were trying to come up with a reason to make you buy a new TV.
Yeah.
Like that was probably 90% of why 3D happened. Oh, and movie tail, we could charge you more for a ticket.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it was in 3D.
I was actively trying to not see 3D movies during that time because they were so many of them were done so poorly. They were shot in 2D, and it just looked like, oh, I'm looking at 4 layers of 2D on the screen, and it cost me $7 more to see this. This is stupid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I also just skipped everything. And then there's like maybe under 10 movies, I think, of 3D movies that I'd be like, oh, they actually tried to do something.
Yeah.
Other than just throw stuff at the screen.
And because there's so much shit in that era, I missed out on Hugo and Fury Road in theaters because I saw them in 2D at the time because I was like, I don't want to waste my money seeing this in 3D. And I didn't realize that they were actually done really well in 3D. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's that no one really sees it as a medium for any kind of expression. It's more of just a technology that's you can do something with, which I feel like doesn't, if movies just stayed in the like Nickelodeon era, where you just go in and you're like, wow, a moving person. Whoa. Yeah. The train is coming at me on the screen. And it's like, if it just stopped there, no one ever told a story with movies as a medium. It just never with 3D have I really seen it. Like you mentioned, like Hugo, and I've probably talked about the like Coraline does an interesting visual effect that's not possible in 2D. But that's it. It's really, I don't know though that I'm like, oh, it needs to be something. Like I'm sad that it isn't that way because I'm like, I don't even know what
is it?
What it really could do that you just can't get out of a 2D movie. Like, does it really bring anything? I was telling Dixon, like,
the one thing that I would love to see out of a 3D movie that I haven't seen yet would be, and I guess Mad Max comes close to it, but getting to see like sweeping landscape shots, like in a Western, but following, on a train or on a horse, something like that, to really get that sense of the land shifting and like the mountains coming closer would be cool. But that's again, just like, this is a gimmicky shot that would be neat to have somewhere. I don't know that it really makes for a good emphasis of like the isolationism of a Western or any of that. It's more just like, here's how you would technically do it. I don't know. Yeah, there's not much you can do with 3D other than its depth or it's coming out at you.
Coming at you.
When do you need to make something feel like deeper and more filled out? Like I've seen James Cameron's post-production 3D movies, which are like really fucking well done. Like they made Terminator 2 in 3D and released it only in Japan, which is wild. And it's surprisingly awesome, but because the filmmaking is awesome already. And then the post-production 3D only chooses a few things here and there to really make them stand out and give you like a cool sense of something in the movie.
It feels like there's only two types. It's either we start with 3D and then we have to make a movie around it. Like the studio wants to use 3D, or we made a movie and then we're going to jam 3D at the end of it. Like never is it actually a thought through process. It's either like hacked on at the beginning or hacked on at the end.
Exactly.
It also feels like a lot of movies either try to do too much with it or don't try to do enough with it. Like Hitchcock made one 3D movie called Dial M for Murder, and it's almost like a play. Like it's almost all taking place in one room. And there's one scene where you have, I think it's Grace Kelly, like reaching for the camera and like moving her hand around as she's being assaulted. And like, that's
that's
it.
the 3D you feel.
It's the only time you get any real 3D effect. I would also refute Coming At Ya. Ryan,
Sorry, Tony.
what do you have for us?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about a show. I'm going to cheat, but I haven't really watched many movies since Encanto and then Quantum Cowboys. But I have watched some TV. I've been keeping up with some anime, maybe, mostly the last season, not necessarily this season. But I had finished up watching Frieren Beyond Journey's End.
I've heard a seasoned mage lives somewhere in these woods. Is that mage you?
Seasoned in the sense I've been around, perhaps, but I've done precious little with my years.
The hero of the South was said to be our strongest weapon. The 7 sages of destruction slaughtered him. The 4 of us may well not make it back alive.
Decades ago, we were forced to retreat by the party of heroes. But this time, she has no heroes to hide behind.
Demons know nothing of charity and would never grant dignity to those with little mana.
I do admit your ally poses a threat to us.
You monster! I will slaughter you in his name. Your peace means nothing to me!
He must have led his forces here to destroy this town.
I shall consider it an honor to sever the head of the Slayer myself.
Every day since I came here, I've felt your desire to kill me. But I just wanted to live in harmony.
We can put an end to all of this, don't you see? Or we can go on spilling each other's blood.
Frieren, the life that lies ahead of you will be far longer than the rest of us could know, or that we could begin to comprehend.
Figure out your own spelling on that. The plot is like the end of an RPG. Like the first 5 minutes of this is as if the hero party has defeated the Demon King. It actually starts off with them like coming back for the victory parade. And our main character, Frieren, is an elf. She's already been alive for several centuries at this point. They only went on this journey for like, it was maybe a couple years or something like that to like go out and attack it. Maybe 5, it's like something, but to her, that's like not much time at all, right? If you live like 200 years, a few years is not that important to your life. And so she's like at the end kind of like, hey, I'll see you guys again. Right. I'm going to go off and do all these other things. You can tell that a couple of the characters kind of know like she's not. Like her perception of time, she's going to kind of forget that she's supposed to come back and hang out with them. And so then it kind of jumps forward 50 odd years and she's finally like, hey, I should go back and check up on them, and finds out that they're dead. There's a couple that are alive, but they're really old. And then there's one guy, he already died. He was like the main, the hero of the group, the warrior of the group. And she actually, pretty much Frieren is like mellow, static through everything. Just really doesn't seem to have much emotions or feelings about things. Sort of the like Spock detached kind of a way of going about it, but she starts to experience things, and she through thinking back on this and realizing like it really was an important time of her life, even though it was short, because she actually spent it with some people and did some interesting things. And so she decides to like follow their journey, like go back to the places they went. And that's kind of like the start of it, is she's going to go like back to every place they went. And so with the story, you're kind of coming back and seeing people who remember this history differently or saw it in a different way. Sometimes she bumps into someone who was like a small child when she was there, but now is an adult, and she can see how things have changed. There's things she was supposed to come back and do, or that she didn't, or, you know, forgot about because of her perception of time. And she ends up taking on an apprentice, and then they find a warrior, and then they find a priest, healer, right? They kind of like ends up RPG building as it goes. But like 90% of this is just exploring that, thinking back on the important times in your life, the connections you have on people, sort of some of the like stopping and smelling the roses, how like gifts or certain events can be really important, even if you didn't think it in the time. Like you go back and realize how important that was. It definitely has that like Violet Evergarden tones. If you know, I mentioned that in the past, if you ended up watching that and saying, hey, I enjoy this, like look at emotions and like dealing with things in the sort of like slowed down pace, that you'll really like Frieren. Like it's really, really solid. And you know, you come to like and get to know the characters and their interactions. But it really is this like interesting, every little like side adventure they go on, there's sort of this pause of like, okay, what did I learn in the past, and what do I wish I had done, and how's that affecting me now? And so yeah, I definitely recommend it. It's a really cool thing to look in on. It's also something that almost tangentially you could bring in someone who doesn't have familiarity with anime. I think if you have someone that has played a bunch of RPGs or Dungeons and Dragons, but they haven't watched any anime, this is probably a really, really solid jump in, because they would get all of it. They would enjoy the narrative being on top of it. This isn't just like we go fight things and then beat the boss kind of, you know, action adventure. This is much more of like the story building, world building around it. But if you have someone that's like, nope, on fantasy in general and trying to get them in, like they're not in, then this is probably not the one to go with, because it is still playing with that like dragons and magic. And there's little stops and they talk about magic spells or whatever. Like one particular interesting, just kind of give an idea of what it is. Frieren's taking on this apprentice. She's teaching her all these different things. Frieren kind of never tells any of them like what to expect. She just sort of throws them in and is like, you go fight it now. Like, even though it's this super powerful thing and I said it was hard, like, you go do it. And so they're kind of like constantly thrown in this, like thinking they can't do it and then realizing like they're more powerful than they are. But there's this demon that had created this like ultimate destruction spell back in the day, and they couldn't beat him. So they ended up like freezing him into stone and like leaving him there. And now Frieren has come back 50 years later and is like, well, I need to clean up this mess and like actually kill this demon. And she explains to her apprentice that he made this like ultimate destruction spell that like just wizards couldn't handle, and it would just destroy anything it touched. And she's been teaching her apprentice like defense this whole time, and like how to use defensive spells and how to handle all that. And when they waken the thing up, he starts using his like ultimate spell, but the apprentice is like blocking it just like easily with the magic that she had learned. And then Frieren just like blasts his fucking head off with his own spell. And then she explains to her apprentice that like over the 50 years after this guy, magicians have just been studying it for like 2 generations, like how that spell like worked, how to defend against it. Yes. Yeah. They figured out all this stuff. They've learned how to balance their mana differently. Like all this, there's a whole college of just like defensive spells, all because of his thing that now is like completely invalidated. It's like the basic attack spell that all the wizards learn now.
That's interesting.
And I'm like, that's an interesting concept to be like, as time passes, how our technology changes, and something that might have been a big deal at one point, we've like broken it apart and figured out everything about it, and it's not a big deal anymore.
I've never thought of there being a lab of wizards studying like a laser bolt spell and being like, we figured out how to get more efficient lasers.
yeah, exactly.
That's pretty neat. What's the visual style of Frieren?
It definitely follows the like classic fantasy anime.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
this is absolutely like fantasy anime. So really pretty, regular visuals. The aesthetic of everything is that like she's an elf and exactly what you're thinking of. They're mages, so they're wearing robes.
Yep.
Like it's relatively straightforward. It is really pretty, and I think because they spend time of the pace is slower. So there is that, like they kind of go to a town or they're out in the countryside and they're stopping and look at things and picking herbs. And so like there's certainly a lot of beauty to it because of that pacing, but it is kind of just like fantasy.
Gotcha.
Like that's just an easy trapping.
Cool. Sounds interesting. Anything else, Ryan, you're recommending for
I recommend it. I watched it with the family and recommend it. It's probably not, you can't watch it with like young kids. They probably wouldn't get the emotional beats anyway, but there certainly is like destroying demons and some like there, some demons that have troubling or concerning powers, one that can like kind of manipulate blood, right? Something like that. It's never really that bad. So definitely like young-ish kids that are already watching like whatever anime is popular. They watch Dragon Ball, they're fine, right? Kind of, it's action-y at parts, just not much of that is not much of it is action, but when it's there, it's there. So, but my family actually really enjoyed it.
Nice.
All right, well, I am going to be talking about a new 2024 film called Fancy Dance.
Powwow's not just about dancing. It's a way to be together. My mom, she won't miss it, will she?
Your mom ever missed a powwow? She'll be there. This is Jack's Good Iron again. I'm calling about my sister's case.
What a Towie!
No, I did speak to the sheriffs.
What a Towie!
No, they said the res is federal jurisdiction. Dad, you ain't been at any of the searches.
I didn't come all the way out here to fight.
Why did you come?
I'm worried about your sister.
Hope she don't come back soon. The state's gonna take Roki.
I'm here to talk to you about your niece. We ran your background check, and I had no choice but to place Roki with your father.
You can't do this.
Auntie, I'm going to Grandpa's.
Roki, it's all right. Just let me talk to her! Roki!
This is written and directed by Erica Tremblay, who is an indigenous filmmaker making a movie about a reservation in Oklahoma. Lily Gladstone is the lead. She plays Jax, who is living with her sister Tawi and her niece Roki. And at the beginning of the film, we learn that her sister Tawi has gone missing, and there are flyers up all over town that she's put up everywhere. And Lily Gladstone's character Jax is just desperate to figure out what has happened to her sister. She has a brother on the tribal police force who seems unwilling to help to the degree that would be expected for somebody whose sister is missing. He's like, well, it's really a federal jurisdiction. We can't really do much as the tribal police on this. So Jax is trying to figure out herself how, where her sister went. Meanwhile, trying to take care of her 13-year-old niece, Roki. They are a couple weeks away from the annual powwow in Oklahoma City, and Roki and her mother would always dance together at the powwow, and they are the reigning mother-daughter champions. And so Roki is really looking forward to the powwow, and she's like, Mom's going to be there, right? Like, we don't know where she is, but like, surely she'll show up to the powwow. She wouldn't miss that. Jax's father is played by Shea Wiggum. So she is half native and half white. Her mother has passed away. Shea Wiggum has since remarried and lives outside the reservation now, and clearly doesn't seem to understand kind of the problems that Jax and Roki are going through as they're trying to find Tawi, and kind of doesn't really understand why they want to live on the reservation and kind of maintain their culture that they grew up with. As they're going around looking for Tawi, trying to figure out where she is, a social worker comes by the house and says, actually, Roki can't stay with you anymore. We have to take her away. Jax has a history of drug dealing and hasn't done it in a long time, but the state is not okay with her taking care of her niece. They take her away to her grandparents' house, and so she's been removed from the reservation and her culture and all her family there. Jackson decides, hey, like I deserve to be taking care of my niece. I'm going to take her to the powwow. Kidnaps her away from her grandparents and goes off looking for Tawi and trying to go to the powwow. There's a really interesting contrast in the movie with how the police delve into Tawi's, her going missing. They seem very uninterested in solving that murder. It's like, it's just another native woman who's gone missing. This happens all the time. We're not going to waste a lot of time here. Meanwhile, when Roki goes missing, she is the, granddaughter of a white family that lives off the reservation. Right. And there is a massive police effort to try to find her, right? We're pulling out all the stops. We got to go find her and return her to her white grandparents. I think this is a really interesting pairing with Killers of the Flower Moon. Like, it feels like kind of a modern day version of that type of story where, we're still living in an environment where Native people are murdered or go missing, and the cops don't really want to do much about that. And there's a lot of poverty on the reservation. It's really hard for Jax and her family to just make a living to be able to pay their bills. And, they are forced to do, extra legal activities in order to just kind of maintain a working class lifestyle. The movie has a really powerful ending, and I think it's just a kind of a fascinating look into like modern day living on a reservation and what it's like to deal with police who aren't interested in actually like solving crimes and helping the community. I think if you've seen Killers of the Flower Moon, it's really interesting to watch beside it. They're both on Apple TV, so if you have that, you can watch both of these, both starring Lily Gladstone. She's very good in this. I think she's probably better in Killers of the Flower Moon, but she's really great in this as well. So I would definitely recommend people check it out. One of my favorite movies of the year so far.
I also heard, I don't know if this was true or not, but that this movie got like dropped for distribution or something. That's why Apple picked it up. I'm not
really
sure.
I don't know. I know it premiered at Sundance, but I'm not sure what happened between then and Apple putting it out on streaming.
Yeah. I am interested to see this. I actually saw a trailer for it, I think 2 days ago, because they just released it recently.
Fairly new. I'm not sure exactly how long it's been streaming, but not too long.
Yeah. So definitely interested. Always want to see more Lily Gladstone. How would you kind of contrast her performance in this with Kills of the Flower Moon, and now that we've seen it, Quantum Cowboys? Because I'm starting to detect kind of a through line of charisma in Gladstone's performances. There's a certain sort of stoicism she portrays in her characters where she is always kind of aware of everything around her, knows a lot more than she lets on at times. How was she in this? Like, what kind of performance did she give?
Yeah, she's really good in this. I think, one of the great things about her performance in Killers of the Flower Moon is she starts out as this really lively person who then is kind of destroyed throughout the movie as her family is killed, and as she's poisoned. You see her kind of deteriorate and lose that spark of life that she had at the start of the movie. In Fancy Dance, she's kind of already very distraught, right? And she is just determined to find her sister and to take care of her niece and to give her niece the life that she wants to have in the reservation connected to her culture. And she's kind of just this one woman force who is trying to find her sister where the cops aren't interested, and the local people in the reservation who are friends or family members don't seem interested in finding her sister either. Like, nobody really wants to help, and everyone has this just resigned attitude about the whole thing. Well, it is what it is. People go missing around here and you don't hear from them again, and that's just, there's nothing we can really do about it. And she refuses to accept that, so she's kind of fighting against everything around her to try to find her sister, but she's also clearly been very beaten down by this system around her, and she's not giving up, but she's kind of at her wit's end at the same time. So it's a really great performance, and her talking with her brother and other family members who are not as interested as she is and not as determined as she is to find her sister, and seeing kind of the disappointment as she goes on and just tries to find her sister despite everything around her. She's great in the movie.
Gotcha.
She was also recently in the miniseries Under the Bridge. I
haven't
watched
seen
a
that.
good chunk of it. Yeah, I watched a good chunk of it. I watched all of it and enjoyed it. But what I did see from Lily Gladstone was really great. She plays a police officer investigating. This is like one of those based on a true story. A group of high school girls murder another high school girl in kind of like a gang initiation style thing in Canada. And Lily Gladstone's a really good performance. There's that she's playing off her sister character who's trying to investigate this for the paper, dealing with these kids and like trying to understand how they've gotten to this level of violence, and trying to draw things out of them and break it apart. Again, yeah, it is that she does kind of play that somewhat stoic character as well. But it's interesting to see how she's challenged by this case and the way the case goes on and the trial and all that. So another really good performance from her to check out.
Cool. Yeah, she always does really great work. I try to check out as much of her stuff as I can. So, yeah, really enjoyed Fancy Dance. And I think, again, if you liked Killers of the Flower Moon, I think it's really interesting to see how a lot has changed since the 1920s, but also not very much has changed. And it's just kind of sad to see where our society is around, Native peoples. And, it's just... it's just depressing, but it's a fascinating film. And I think it really gives a voice to what natives on reservations are experiencing in modern day Oklahoma and how they're dealing with that environment.
Yeah, I will say I'm excited for like movies like this. Just Lily Gladstone's presence in film. It excites me to see more and more like native stories being told, like the indigenous people perspective to bring to films. But I'm also excited, likewise, to get to an aspect where you get more fun in your films, where you can have more fun, where you don't have to kind of present this only perspective. Because I feel like I'm reading a book right now about blaxploitation, and there was a period of time where everybody was like, how many movies about like slavery and this perspective of like the Black experience we're going to see? And people were like they were upset when blaxploitation came out, because they were like, oh great, now we have to like go back through this backlog and make every movie that's ever been made but with Black people in it. And like this interesting backlash to that effect. But I think honestly it's just great. Like it there's a rubber band effect, and I want to see it happen for indigenous perspective, where hopefully it doesn't always have to meditate on these depressing things, because the systems will change. Like I'm hopeful that any of the systemic problems will start to get more light shed on them with these things and become better. And then hopefully indigenous filmmakers won't have to worry about people coming up after like a film screening and be like, that was great. Why didn't you make it about your experience on the reservation or like these things? Like, I don't know. Part of me thinks that anytime I see this, so I'm interested to check it out. I want to see more from Lily Gladstone. And in terms of direction, Erica Tremblay, like, have there been other films that she's done, or do you feel like you want to see more films based on this than it sounds like?
I would definitely see other movies by her. She did a great job directing it. I don't think she's done a whole lot else.
She was a writer for Reservation Dogs.
Oh, and she directed 2 episodes of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
and
she's done some short films.
Nice.
Yeah, which it's interesting. There does seem to be a bit of a native boom, which is good to see, and definitely Killers of the Flower Moon will bring a lot of attention in. But yeah, good to have these like smaller movies and smaller pieces as well. Reservation Dogs is a good not dwelling on the reservation life. Yeah. There is some life issues, like it's there, but there's tons of other stuff. There's tons of stuff that's funny. Yeah. We didn't mention, John, that our boy Brownie from Reservation Dogs, the actor
was
that
in Quantum Cowboy.
Was in Quantum Cowboy.
Yes.
Yeah. He's one of the fun standouts in Reservation Dogs as well.
Yeah. Well, cool. It sounds like that's a recommend for sure.
Yes, definitely recommend for Fancy Dance. We'd encourage anybody to check it out.
Nice.
Cool. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up. We have a Refute of Comin At Ya.
Comin At Ya.
From John.
Yeah, and also don't get it twisted. I'm not recommending Wings of the Hawk for anybody out there either. I just thought it was a better film for 3D than Comin At Ya was.
And we have a recommendation from Ryan for a very complicated
Frieren
colon
Beyond
something.
Journey's End. Yeah, Beyond Journey's End. That's probably the
Frieren
easiest part.
Beyond Journey's End. And a recommendation from me for Fancy Dance. Cool. Well, thank you for joining us this week. I have been your host, Michael Dixon. With me, as always,
Ryan King. I guess this is all like real now, right? It's been recorded. That's how it works.
That's right.
Yeah, this is real history.
This actually happened.
Yeah.
And John Garcia.
Hey, you took my name. And John Garcia.
I did do that. My apologies.
I can't believe he took my name. Well, thanks for putting up with his bullshit. Hey there, movie buffs, TV toughs, and all listeners in between. John here from the Afterthoughts podcast. I just wanted to drop in at the end of this episode and say thanks for listening. If you've got afterthoughts of your own to share, hit us up. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Afterpod, or jump into a conversation on our Discord server. You can find info for this and more at theafterpod.transistor.fm. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.